A successful businessman mistakenly enters a hospital's ICU and finds 3 children alone. When he asks about their mother, he discovers a devastating connection to the past he tried to forget. As his professional world pressures him for decisions, he is forced to confront a truth impossible to ignore. What begins as a wrong turn transforms into the greatest new beginning of his life, and perhaps his last chance to right an unforgivable wrong. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. Let's continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. Richard Brown adjusted his Italian silk tie as the elevator ascended to the 10th floor of Mercy Hope General Hospital in the heart of Chicago. The Patek Philippe on his wrist read 2:28 p.m., 2 minutes early for his meeting with the hospital's board of directors. Perfect, as always. In the leather briefcase he carried was the sponsorship proposal that would put Brown Enterprises on the facade of the new pediatric wing. A strategic deal, calculated like everything else in his life. At 39, Richard had everything he desired: a real estate empire built with iron determination, a Gold Coast condo with a view of Lake Michigan, and the freedom that only planned solitude could provide. To him, relationships were risky investments that rarely paid off. The elevator stopped with a slight jolt. The doors opened to an aseptic hallway of cold light and a silence disturbed only by the distant beeps of machines keeping lives hanging by a thread. This wasn't the executive floor. He glanced at the panel. Someone had pressed the wrong button. 6th floor, intensive care unit. He sighed in annoyance. Another interruption in his meticulous schedule. That's when he saw them. 3 little girls huddled together on a grey plastic bench in front of the ICU door. The smallest couldn't have been more than 4, clutching a worn-out rag doll. The middle one, maybe 6, had silent tears streaming down her face. The oldest, probably 8, had her protective arms wrapped around her sisters. Something about the scene made him hesitate. The elevator remained open, waiting. He just had to press the button for the 10th floor again and be on his way. But his feet seemed glued to the floor. "Where's your mother, girls?" The question escaped before he could contain it. The oldest looked up, greenish-brown eyes, intense and familiar. "Mommy's sleeping in there. The doctor said she's going to get better, but it's taking a long time." Richard looked around. The hallway was strangely empty. "Are you alone? Is there no one with you?" The middle girl sniffled. "Our neighbor brought us, but she had to go pick up her kids from school. She said she'd be back later." Something was wrong. 3 small children abandoned in a hospital. Where was social services? The head nurse? Any responsible adult? "What are your names?" "I'm Laura," said the oldest. "This is Sophia, and the little one is Beatrice. We're the Anderson sisters." The surname hit Richard like a punch. Anderson. 5 years. 5 years since that name had meant anything in his life. "And your mother?" he asked, feeling his throat tighten. "What's her name?" "Amanda. Amanda Anderson." The world seemed to spin around Richard. It was impossible. Amanda had disappeared from his life, without a trace after a nearly 2-year relationship. He remembered the last time he'd seen her, an argument about priorities, about a future he couldn't see beyond his business deals. He remembered the short note left on the pillow, which he had barely read, too busy to process what he had lost. He sat down on the bench next to the girls. The 10th floor, the meeting, the project, all suddenly insignificant. "Mommy was driving, and then she fell asleep," explained Sophia, the middle one. "The car spun and she didn't wake up." "That's not quite right," Laura corrected. "It was an accident. Mommy fainted while driving. The doctor said it's because of her heart problem." Richard felt his own heart skip a beat. Amanda had never mentioned any heart problems. A nurse finally appeared in the hallway, hurrying. "Sir, ICU visits are only permitted for immediate family and at specific times." "These children are the patient's daughters," he replied, standing up. "They're alone. There's no one responsible for them here." The nurse frowned, consulting a clipboard. "Amanda Anderson? Yes, she was admitted last night. We've been trying to contact her emergency contact since then, but there was a problem with the records. I'll call the social worker." Minutes later, a woman in her 40s with curly hair tied in a simple bun and a sharp gaze approached. "I'm Cecilia Sanders, from Social Services. Are you a relative of the children?" Richard hesitated. What was he? An ex-boyfriend from 5 years ago? A stranger? I knew their mother. Amanda and we had a relationship. The social worker's gaze assessed him with professional suspicion. "I see. And you are?" "Richard Brown." A flash of recognition crossed Cecilia's eyes. "From Brown Enterprises?" "Yes." "Interesting." She consulted a folder. "We have a serious problem. Mrs. Anderson has no close family in Chicago. According to our records, she came from New Orleans a few years ago. The children can't stay here alone, and normally we would have to place them temporarily in a shelter while we locate relatives." The three girls looked at Richard with alarmed expressions. "I don't want to go to a shelter," murmured Beatrice, the little one, clutching her rag doll tighter. "I want to stay with Mommy." Something stirred inside Richard, something that had been dormant for a long time. "That won't be necessary," he heard himself say. "I can take care of them temporarily until Amanda recovers." Cecilia arched her eyebrows. "Mr. Brown, it's not that simple. There are legal procedures, background checks, home suitability assessments." "I'm sure there are. I'm willing to go through all of them." His tone was the same he used in decisive negotiations. "In the meantime, I guarantee they will have all the comfort and security they need." Laura was looking at Richard with a disconcerting intensity. "Do you really know my mom?" "I did, a long time ago." "Then why have we never seen you before?" The simple question hit him like a direct arrow. Why had he never seen these children? Why had Amanda disappeared so completely from his life? Before he could answer, his phone vibrated in his pocket. It was Patricia, his executive assistant, probably wondering why he hadn't shown up for the meeting. "Mr. Brown," Cecilia interrupted his thoughts. "There's another strange detail. The hospital system registered an emergency contact for Mrs. Anderson, but there's a glitch in the record. The name is corrupted in the system with only the initials RB. Would that be you?" Richard felt a chill run down his spine. RB Richard Brown. After 5 years, his name was still Amanda's emergency contact. The phone vibrated again. The meeting, the project, the company, all awaited his decisions. But looking at the 3 pairs of eyes watching him with a mixture of curiosity and hope, Richard knew he was about to make the most important decision of his life. "Yes," he finally answered. "I believe it is." The watch on Richard's wrist read 2:42 p.m. For the first time in years, he was officially late. And strangely, that no longer seemed to matter. Richard's apartment, a 3,000-square-foot duplex in the Gold Coast, had never seemed so large and so empty as it did that night. Sitting on the Italian leather sofa he rarely used, he watched the 3 girls asleep on the living room rug, wrapped in blankets that his housekeeper, Mrs. Gable, had hastily provided. Laura, Sophia, and Beatrice, Amanda's daughters. Maybe his daughters? He couldn't take his eyes off them. The oldest, Laura, had his eyebrows. Sophia had something of her mother in the shape of her face, and Beatrice had the exact same crease between her brows when she frowned, just like him. After hours of bureaucracy, Cecilia Sanders had authorized emergency temporary custody, but she had made it clear it would only be for a few days, until they located a close relative of Amanda's or until she woke up. A DNA test would be necessary to prove any claim of paternity, should Richard decide to go down that path. Paternity. The word echoed in his mind like a distant bell. He remembered the phone call he had made hours earlier, cancelling not only the meeting, but all his appointments for the week. Patricia, his assistant, had been stunned. "You've never taken a day off in 5 years, Richard," she had said, incredulous. "What's going on?" What was going on? He didn't really know himself. Laura stirred in her sleep, murmuring something incomprehensible. Her small face tensed in a worried expression, even while sleeping. Without thinking, Richard adjusted the blanket over her, a gesture of care that surprised even himself. From his briefcase, he took out the yellowed note he had kept for 5 years. The words were almost faded by time, but still capable of causing a deep unease. We can't build a future together when only one of us is willing to change. I need to find my own way. Please don't look for me. A. At the time, involved in acquiring a crucial piece of land for his first major development, Richard had barely felt the impact of the loss. Days later, when he finally realized Amanda's definitive absence, his pride stopped him from looking for her. He believed she would come back. Later, he decided it was for the best. Now, looking at the three little girls, he questioned everything he had believed to be important in his life. His phone vibrated discreetly. A text from Cecilia Sanders. Mrs. Anderson remains stable. No changes. Temporary custody documents being processed. Home visit at your residence tomorrow, 9 a.m. Mrs. Gable appeared at the living room door with a cup of tea. Sir, I prepared the guest room for the girls, but they've already fallen asleep right there. Poor things, they're exhausted. The 60-year-old housekeeper who had been taking care of his apartment for a decade seemed rejuvenated by the children's presence. Her eyes, normally practical, had a different sparkle. Thank you, Mrs. Gable. I don't know what I would have done without you today. You'll need more help if they stay. Children are a lot of work, she smiled. Good work, but work nonetheless. Richard nodded, slowly absorbing the reality of his situation. I'll hire a nanny to help. Pardon me, sir, but these girls don't need a nanny. They need someone who knows what it's like to be a mother. She paused. My niece Adriana worked as a preschool teacher for years. She's been looking for a job since the little school where she worked closed down. She has a special way with children. Bring her in tomorrow then, Richard replied, grateful for the practical suggestion. After Mrs. Gable left, he turned his attention to his laptop, searching for Amanda's name in every database he could access. He found that she worked as a freelance translator, lived in a modest apartment in Wicker Park, and that, according to her records, she was a single mother. No mention of any father figure. The morning came quickly. Richard, who had slept only a few hours on the sofa so as not to leave the girls alone, was awakened by a small hand touching his face. Uncle, can we see Mummy today? It was Sophia, with her big pleading eyes. Of course we can. He sat up, trying to organize his thoughts. But first we'll have breakfast, brush our teeth, and he realized he had no children's toothbrushes, no clothes, nothing that children needed in his minimalist apartment. Laura, already awake and sitting on the rug, seemed to read his mind. Our things are at our house. Do we have school today? School. Of course. Children went to school. Which school? Where was it? What were their routines? Not today, Laura. First we'll visit your mum, and then we'll get some of your things from your house, okay? Beatrice, still sleepy, hugged her rag doll tightly. Is Mommy awake yet? The lump in Richard's throat returned. Not yet, sweetie, but the doctors are taking good care of her. Breakfast was a surprisingly lively event. Mrs. Gable made pancakes that the girls devoured with enthusiasm. Richard watched, fascinated, how three such small beings could bring so much life to a space that had always seemed sufficient in its silence and order. Laura, between bites, studied him with curiosity. You're rich, aren't you? The direct question caught him off guard. I'm financially comfortable, yes. Mommy said she knew someone important before we were born. Was that you? Sophia interrupted. She said he was handsome and stubborn, just like you, Laura. The girls laughed, and Richard felt a pang in his chest. Amanda spoke of him to her daughters. At 8:30 a.m., Adriana arrived, a woman in her early 30s, with a welcoming smile and a calm energy. She introduced herself naturally to the girls, who received her with childlike curiosity. At 9 a.m. sharp, the doorbell rang. Cecilia Sanders, punctual as an executive, began the home visit. Her eyes registered every detail of the apartment, making discreet notes. The children will need their own space, she observed, inspecting the guest room. Proper beds, clothes, school supplies. Are you willing to provide all of this? Yes, without a doubt. And what about your work? I understand you have a very demanding schedule. I'm rearranging my priorities. The answer came with a conviction that surprised even Richard himself. I've hired Adriana to assist with their care, but I intend to be present. Cecilia studied him for a moment, as if trying to decipher a complex puzzle. You mentioned you knew Mrs. Anderson a few years ago. Can you tell me more about that relationship? We were together for almost 2 years. Richard hesitated, measuring his words. We broke up about 5 years ago. She made some notes. And you believe you might be the girl's father? The question hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Laura was 8, which meant Amanda would have already been pregnant when she disappeared from his life. The math added up. It's a possibility I'm considering. His voice came out hoarser than he expected. I will request a paternity test, with the appropriate consent, of course. Cecilia nodded, not revealing her thoughts. I've located Mrs. Anderson's address. It would be important to retrieve some of the children's belongings, school documents, and information about their routine. I can accompany you there this afternoon. After the social worker left, promising to return at 2 p.m., Richard found the girls in the living room, drawing with colored pencils that Adriana had brought in her bag. Beatrice had drawn what looked like a family, 3 small figures, a larger one with long hair, and another, even larger one, separate from the rest. Who's this? He asked, pointing to the isolated figure. That's the prince, Beatrice replied with the simplicity of her 4 years. Mommy said one day he would find us. Richard felt a tightness in his chest. Had Amanda created some kind of fairy tale to explain the paternal absence? The phone rang again. It was Patricia. Richard, the board is demanding your presence for the final approval of the Mercy Hope project. I can't delay it any longer. He looked at the 3 girls engrossed in their drawings, at the clock that read 10:30 a.m., and made another decision that challenged everything he thought he was. Cancel my participation. Tell them I trust their judgment and will sign the documents later. I'll be out of the office for the rest of the week. For the first time in his adult life, Richard Brown was putting someone, above business. And most surprisingly, he didn't feel any regret. At 11 a.m., they arrived at Mercy Hope General Hospital. The girls, anxious to see their mother, held his hands as they walked down the ICU hallway. Richard felt a mix of apprehension and hope when the nurse allowed a brief visit. Seeing Amanda after 5 years, lying in a hospital bed, connected to monitors and tubes, was like a punch to the gut. Her brown hair spread out on the pillow, her pale skin, the lips that once smiled for him, now sealed in a disturbing silence. But what really shook him was the naturalness with which the girls approached her, as if completing a picture he never imagined existed. Amanda's small apartment in Wicker Park had the unmistakable scent of a home. It was very different from his spacious duplex in the Gold Coast, which looked more like a luxury design showroom. Here, there was life in every corner. Children's drawings taped to the refrigerator, plants in the windows, storybooks stacked on the hearth, living room shelf and photographs, many photographs. Richard felt like an intruder, accompanied by Cecilia Sanders, while Laura, Sophia and Beatrice ran to their rooms, eager to show off their personal treasures and grab some clothes and toys. Is this where you live? He asked, still taking in the details of the cozy yet simple environment. Yes, replied Sophia, proud, pulling him by the hand. Come see our room. The 3 girls shared a single room, small but organized. 3 beds with colorful quilts, a shelf with children's books, a toy box and a small wardrobe. On the wall, more drawings and a shelf with ballet trophies and swimming medals. Laura does ballet and swimming, Sophia explained. I only do ballet because I'm scared of water, and Bia is still little, but she's starting ballet next month. Richard absorbed every piece of information like parts of a puzzle that was beginning to form. Cecilia watched his reaction closely. Their school is in the neighborhood, she informed him. I spoke with the principal on the phone this morning. The girls are enrolled at Rainbow Academy 3 blocks from here. It's a small institution but with a good reputation. Richard nodded, registering the information. His gaze was drawn to a partially open door at the end of the hallway. Amanda's room. He hesitated for a moment, feeling like an invader, but he needed to understand. Entering that room was like stepping into the 5 years he had lost of her life. The room was simple. A double bed, a dresser, a wardrobe, and a desk with a laptop and several stacked books. On the nightstand, more photographs. He picked one up. The three girls on a beach, smiling, with Amanda hugging them. The date in the corner indicated it had been taken last summer in Saugatuck. "She took us to the beach every year," said Laura, who had quietly entered the room. "Mommy says the sea heals everything." Richard swallowed hard, touching the frame with his fingertips. "You look very happy there." "We are." Laura studied him with those unsettling eyes so similar to his own. "But Mommy gets sad sometimes when she thinks we're not looking." A book on the desk caught his attention. The Little Prince, the same one he had given Amanda years ago, with a dedication on the first page, "For when the stars are not enough, R.B." He felt a tightness in his chest. She had kept it all these years. Cecilia cleared her throat discreetly at the door. "Mr. Brown, I found some important documents in the living room. Birth certificates, vaccination records, school records. It would be useful to take them with us." Richard nodded, still absorbing the details of this life he knew nothing about. "We have to go soon," Cecilia informed him. "ICU visiting hours start at 4 p.m., and I imagine the girls will want to see their mother." Back in the living room, a framed photograph on the shelf caught his eye. It was Amanda, visibly pregnant, smiling at the camera, a photo he had never seen, of a moment they had never shared. Sophia approached, following his gaze. "That's Mommy when she had us in her belly. She said she was very happy but also very scared." "Scared of what?" "Of doing it all alone." The child's words hit him like a direct arrow. Alone. Amanda had been alone all this time, raising 3 daughters. When they returned to the hospital, with a few makeshift bags containing the girls' clothes and personal items, Richard felt different. It was as if that visit to the apartment had solidified something within him. The reality of those lives, the absence he had represented, the opportunity that now presented itself. The attending physician, Dr. Amanda Quinn, greeted them with a neutral expression perfected by years of practice. "Mrs. Anderson's condition remains stable, but it's still critical. The cardiac arrest caused a temporary interruption of blood flow to the brain. We are monitoring her to assess for possible neurological damage." "And when will she wake up?" asked Beatrice, with the innocence of her 4 years. The doctor knelt to be at the little girl's level. "Your mum is fighting very hard, sweetie. The medicine is helping her rest so she can get strong again. We don't know exactly when she'll wake up, but we're doing everything we can." Laura, ever observant, read between the lines. "But she will wake up, right? Promise?" A brief silence fell over the hallway. The doctor looked at Richard, who felt the weight of that question. "Your mother is young and strong," Dr. Quinn replied, choosing her words carefully. "We have good reason to be optimistic." It wasn't a promise, Richard noted, and Laura, with her wisdom, beyond her years, noticed it too. During the visit, the girls talked to Amanda as if she could hear them, telling her about Richard's apartment, about Mrs. Gable and her pancakes, about the drawings they had made. The naturalness with which they included Richard in their stories surprised him. "And then Uncle Richard let us sleep in the living room on the fluffy rug," Sophia narrated excitedly. "His apartment is huge, Mom. It looks like it's from a TV show." Beatrice approached the bed and placed her rag doll next to Amanda's pillow. "Nina will stay with you, so you won't be lonely, okay? But you have to give her back later." Richard felt a lump in his throat. The innocence and hope of these children were overwhelming. When the visit ended, Cecilia called him aside for a conversation in the hallway, while Adriana stayed with the girls in the waiting area. "Mr. Brown, we need to discuss some practical matters. The girls' school resumes its normal routine on Monday. Rainbow Academy is over 40 minutes from your residence, considering Chicago traffic. I can arrange for private transportation or... Richard hesitated, an idea forming in his mind. "Perhaps it would be better for me to find a temporary rental near their school, to minimize the disruption to their routines." Cecilia seemed genuinely surprised. "That would be very considerate of you. Most people try to adapt children to their lives, not the other way around." "I'm not most people," he said, with a conviction that had been growing with each passing hour. Back at his apartment, while the girls watched cartoons with Adriana, Richard made a series of phone calls. First, to his real estate manager, requesting a furnished apartment near Wicker Park for immediate lease. Then, to his legal team, instructing them to prepare documentation for a possible paternity test and a more formal temporary guardianship. Finally, he called Patricia, his assistant, who sounded increasingly alarmed by his prolonged absence. "Richard, the investors are getting restless. We have the meeting with the Chinese delegation on Tuesday, and the project for the commercial complex in the Loop needs your final approval. The board is questioning your sudden leave." For the first time in his career, Richard didn't feel the usual urgency regarding his professional duties. "Patricia, I'm going to need you to reschedule everything for next week. I'm dealing with an urgent family situation." "Family?" The surprise in her voice was palpable. "Since when do you have—" "Just do as I ask, please." His voice was firm, but not aggressive. "I'll send the signed Mercy Hope documents tomorrow. For the rest, I trust your judgment to prioritize." There was a strange silence on the other end of the line. "Patricia." "Sorry, Richard. It's just, in 8 years of working with you, I've never heard you say you trust someone else's judgment on anything related to the business." He smiled involuntarily. "Things change, Patricia. That night after a lively dinner where the girls taught Richard how to eat pizza with his hands. "Mommy says eating pizza with a fork and knife is a sin," Sophia declared. He found himself alone in the living room again, watching them sleep. Tomorrow, he would need to buy proper beds, organize the guest room, get school supplies, find out their ballet and swimming schedules, an endless list of tasks he had never prepared for. His phone rang. It was Cecilia. "Mr. Brown, I had a meeting with the medical team. There's a consent form for the DNA test that needs to be signed tomorrow. I also managed to get special authorization for a visit outside of standard ICU hours. I thought you might want a private moment." The prospect of being alone with Amanda, after 5 years, made his heart race. "Thank you, Cecilia. That would be helpful. I'll be at the hospital at 9 a.m. tomorrow with the documents. The special visit is scheduled for 8 p.m. After hanging up, Richard saw that Laura was awake, watching him from the living room doorway. "Are you going to see Mommy alone?" she asked with that disconcerting perception. "Yes. There are some things I need to tell her." Laura nodded as if she understood perfectly. "You know, Uncle Richard, Mommy has a secret box. She keeps important things in there." "A box?" "Yeah. It's wooden, with birds carved on it. It's under her bed. Sometimes, when she thinks we're asleep, she looks at the things in the box and cries." Richard felt a tightness in his chest. "How do you know that, Laura?" The girl shrugged. "I see things. Sophia and Bea fall asleep fast, but I don't. I think Mommy keeps sad things in that box." "Why are you telling me this?" Laura stared at him with those eyes that seemed to see far beyond her 8 years. "Because I think you have something to do with the secret box, and with Mommy being sad sometimes." The clock read exactly 8 p.m. when Richard entered the ICU. The silent corridor, lit only by the cold glow of fluorescent lamps, felt like a limbo between worlds. Here, he thought, between life and its absence, decisions were made, destinies sealed. The head nurse, a kind-faced woman, guided him to Amanda's bedside. 15 minutes, she informed him in a low voice, and while there's no conclusive scientific evidence, we believe that patients in a coma can hear. So talk to her." Richard nodded, grateful for the information and the privacy. When he was finally alone with Amanda, he felt the weight of 5 years of absence, of unspoken words, of choices made. He sat in the chair next to the bed, observing the serene face he had once known so well. The lips that had smiled for him, now silenced by a breathing tube. The hands that had touched him with affection, now still with an IV line. She looked different, her face more mature, small lines around her, eyes that weren't there before, and yet she was undeniably Amanda. "Hi," he said, suddenly feeling foolish for the simplicity of the word. "I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm here." Silence, except for the steady beep of the monitors. I met our daughters." The word "our" slipped out before he could consider it, but it sounded right. They're extraordinary, Amanda. Laura has your perceptive eyes and my stubbornness. Sophia, your smile and your energy. And Beatrice. She's small, but she already shows your compassion. How did you do it? How did you raise 3 such incredible people all by yourself? He paused, feeling emotion tighten his throat. It should have been different. I should have been there. If I had read your note carefully, if I had looked for you, if I wasn't so blinded by my own ambition. His voice broke. I lost 5 years, Amanda, 5 years that I can't get back. He took her hand in his, careful not to dislodge the IV line. I don't know what happened. I don't know why you didn't tell me about the pregnancy. I don't know why you disappeared so completely, but I know that when you wake up, and you will wake up, Amanda, I want a chance to do things right this time. The heart monitor showed a slight increase in her heart rate, or maybe it was just his desperate imagination looking for a sign. The girls are with me now. I'm taking care of them, trying at least. I bought a book on how to do braids because Sophia's hair keeps falling in her face. He smiled faintly. I'm terrible at it, but I'll get better. I hired Adriana, who is great with them, and Mrs. Gable is delighted to have children in the house. He paused, observing Amanda's still face. I'm looking for an apartment near their school so as not to disrupt their routine, and tomorrow I'll do a DNA test. Not that I need it to feel that they're mine, but you understand? There are legal issues. The 15 minutes passed like seconds. When the nurse returned, Richard felt he had barely begun to say everything he needed to. I'll be back tomorrow, he promised before leaving. We'll all be back. The next morning, Richard's world seemed to move at 2 different speeds, accelerated when he was with the girls dealing with practical issues and adapting to the new routine, and almost at a standstill when he thought of Amanda, in the hospital, fighting for her life. Cecilia Sanders appeared promptly at 9 a.m. with the necessary paperwork for the DNA test and a few more authorizations. We found a lab that will do the collection and analysis on an urgent basis, she informed him as she accompanied Richard to the designated clinic. The results could be ready in 3 business days. The girls had stayed at the apartment with Adriana, organizing their belongings in the room that would now be theirs. Richard had bought 3 new beds, colorful dresses, and an amount of toys and books that would make any child's dream come true. A small compensation for lost time, perhaps. You seem determined, Cecilia observed, as they waited for the procedure at the lab. I am, he answered simply. May I ask what changed? 5 years is a long time to suddenly take on the paternity of 3 children. Richard considered the question, feeling the weight of the veiled judgment in her words. I haven't changed, Cecilia. I've just woken up to something that was always there. The social worker studied him for a moment. You know, my job is to protect children, to ensure they aren't abandoned again after forming attachments. I've seen men like you, successful, privileged, enter children's lives like a hurricane, full of promises and gifts, only to disappear when the novelty wears off or when they realize the real work involved in raising children. I'm not men like you, he replied, keeping his calm. I'm Richard Brown, and those are very likely my daughters. I'm not doing a favor. I'm taking on a responsibility that should have been mine from the start. Before Cecilia could respond, the lab technician called Richard for the sample collection. The procedure was quick and painless, a simple swab on the inside of his cheek. The girl's genetic material would be collected later at the apartment. On the way back, Richard noticed that Cecilia seemed to be evaluating his every word and reaction. It was understandable. Her role was to protect the girls, and he was still, in a way, a stranger in their lives. The apartment I mentioned is available, he informed her, breaking the silence. On Oak Street, 2 blocks from Rainbow Academy, I signed the lease last night. We're arranging the move for tomorrow. Cecilia seemed genuinely surprised. That is a significant commitment. As I said, I'm determined. Back at the apartment, they found an unusual scene. Beatrice, Sophia, and Laura were in the kitchen with Mrs. Gable, all wearing makeshift aprons preparing what looked like a cake. Uncle Richard, Sophia shouted upon seeing him. We're making Mommy's chocolate cake. Mrs. Gable let us help. The always immaculate apartment now had flour scattered on the counter, chocolate drops on the floor, and laughter filling every space. Richard felt a warmth spread through his chest. This is what a home should feel like. "This is Mommy's favorite cake," Laura explained as she mixed the batter. "We're going to take a slice to her at the hospital. It'll help her get better faster." The simplicity of the children's logic moved him. The rest of the day was spent preparing for the move and visiting the hospital. In the evening, after the girls had fallen asleep, Richard received an unexpected call. It was Patricia. "Richard, sorry to call so late, but I need to inform you that Michael Rivers has called an extraordinary board meeting for tomorrow. The topic is you." Michael was the CFO of Brown Enterprises, an ambitious man who had always coveted Richard's position. "What exactly do they want to discuss, Patricia?" "Your sudden leave and possible emotional instability." He could hear the quotation marks in her voice. "Michael is implying that you might be going through some kind of crisis and that it's jeopardizing the upcoming projects, especially the Mercy Hope one." Richard felt a wave of irritation. "Michael has always wanted my job." "Yes, and he's using your absence to create doubt." "Richard, I don't want to be invasive, but what's going on? You've never been away like this?" He hesitated. Patricia was more than an assistant. After 8 years, she was practically a confidant. But still, this situation was too delicate, too personal. "I'm handling an important family matter, Patricia. That's all I can say for now." "Family?" The surprise in her voice was evident. "I thought you didn't have any close family since your parents passed away." "Circumstances have changed." He paused. "Attend the meeting tomorrow and represent me. Tell them I'm perfectly lucid and that I'll be back on Monday for a general meeting. In the meantime, I have full confidence in the team to carry on with the projects as planned." After hanging up, Richard realized he was being watched again. Laura was at the bedroom door, clutching a book. "Do you have to go back to work?" she asked, with that unsettling perceptiveness. "At some point, yes. But I'm not going to leave you." Laura came closer, holding out the book to him. It was The Little Prince. "Read to me? Mommy always reads this when we can't sleep." Sitting on the bed, with Laura nestled under his arm, Richard read the words he knew so well. The book was the same one he had given to Amanda. He could see his dedication on the first page. "Uncle Richard," Laura interrupted when he got to the part about the fox. "You knew Mommy before we were born, right?" "Yes." "Were you boyfriend and girlfriend?" The direct question caught him off guard. "Yes, Laura, for almost 2 years." "And you left?" Richard felt a lump in his throat. "Not exactly. Your mother, she left, and I didn't go after her." "Why?" How could he explain to an 8-year-old child foolish pride, an obsession with work, the inability to see what truly mattered? "Because I was, blind, Laura. I couldn't see what was really important." The girl studied him with those eyes so similar to his own. "And now you see?" "Now I see." Laura nodded, as if everything finally made sense. "Mommy has a picture of you in her secret box. A few, actually, and those letters she never sends." "Letters?" "Yeah. She writes letters. Sometimes she reads them out loud when she thinks we're asleep. Letters to you." Richard's heart raced. Do you know what those letters say?" Laura shrugged. "Some of it. She says she misses you, that you'd be proud of us, that she wishes she had been braver. Things like that." Richard struggled to maintain his composure. All these revelations, one after another, were reassembling the puzzle of 5 years of silence. "Laura, do you think your mom still likes me? After everything?" The girl smiled, a smile that strongly resembled Amanda's. "Mommy says that when you really love someone, you never stop loving them. You just learn to live with the missing." The next morning, the preliminary results of the DNA test arrived by email. Richard opened the message with his heart pounding, though he already knew in his gut what he would find. Probability of paternity, 99.99998%. It was official. Laura, Sophia, and Beatrice were his daughters. When he shared the news with Cecilia, she nodded, showing no surprise. This simplifies the temporary custody process. I will begin the procedures for legal recognition of paternity. She paused. Mr. Brown, should I congratulate you or express my condolences for the 5 years you lost of their lives? The question, though harsh, was fair. Both, Cecilia, and I promise I won't lose another day. The apartment on Oak Street had a completely different atmosphere from the luxurious duplex in the Gold Coast. Smaller, cozier, and surprisingly closer to what Richard now understood as home. In the last 3 days, he had transformed into an almost unrecognizable version of himself. He had learned to prepare a nutritious breakfast for 3 demanding children, discovered that a hairstyle called a ponytail was not as simple as it looked, and developed the ability to distinguish which of Beatrice's cries meant sleepiness and which meant hunger. Mrs. Gable and Adriana had temporarily moved in with them, creating a small improvised community. The new apartment had 3 bedrooms, one for the girls, decorated with the colors and toys they brought from home, one for Richard, and another for Mrs. Gable and Adriana to share. It wasn't the most conventional arrangement, but it worked. The school routine had resumed. Every morning, Richard walked the girls to the gate of Rainbow Academy, feeling the curious glances of other mothers and the inevitable whispers. Is that their father? I've never seen him before. I heard their mother is in the hospital. Laura, ever observant, had noticed his discomfort. Don't mind them, Dad, they always gossip. Dad. The word still caught him off guard, but every time he heard it, something warmed inside him. That Friday morning, after dropping the girls at school, Richard headed to the hospital for his daily visit with Amanda. It was the 7th day since the accident, and although her condition remained stable, there were no signs of significant improvement. In the ICU hallway, he ran into Dr. Amanda Quinn, who greeted him with a nod. Mr. Brown, I was just looking for you. We have some developments in Mrs. Anderson's case. Richard's heart raced. Is something wrong? On the contrary, we detected increased brain activity during the night. It's a good sign. We're gradually reducing the sedation to assess her response. Does that mean that she may wake up soon? The doctor paused. Mr. Brown, when that happens, she will be confused. It's important for there to be familiar faces nearby. Richard nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and apprehension. We'll be here. Me and the girls. About that, the doctor hesitated. I would recommend that she first sees only one familiar adult. The emotional impact of seeing her daughters immediately might be too intense. Perhaps you could be present initially. The prospect of being the first person Amanda would see upon waking was simultaneously terrifying and comforting. Of course, I'll do whatever is best for her. Inside the ICU, Richard noticed subtle differences in Amanda. Her skin seemed less pale, and there was less equipment connected to her. He sat in the chair by the bed as he did every day and took her hand. Good morning, Amanda. The girls send their love. Sophia made a drawing for you last night. She said it's you dancing on a rainbow. He smiled slightly. The anatomy is a bit questionable, but the sentiment is genuine. He spoke to her naturally, as if she could hear him. He told her about the girl's previous day, about adjusting to the new apartment, about small daily victories. Laura taught me how to make pasta the way you do. With homemade tomato sauce and that shredded cheese, she says, has to be the yellow kind, not the white one. He paused. It was terrible the first time. Better the second. I think I need a few more tries to get to your level. As he spoke, he noticed a subtle movement. Amanda's fingers had twitched slightly in his hand. Richard froze, watching intently. It could have been just an involuntary reflex. Amanda? He called softly. Can you hear me? Nothing for a few seconds. Then again, a slight pressure on his fingers. It wasn't his imagination. Richard pressed the call button for the nurse, who arrived promptly. She's responding, he said, trying to contain the emotion in his voice. She squeezed my hand twice. The nurse checked her vitals and called Dr. Quinn immediately. After a quick assessment, the doctor confirmed, "She's emerging from the coma. It's a gradual process. Keep talking to her, it helps with orientation." The next few hours were an emotional roller coaster. Richard stayed by Amanda's side, holding her hand, speaking softly. Sometimes she would respond with slight squeezes, other times, nothing. Adriana had picked up the girls from school and taken them home, explaining there would be a surprise later. It was early in the evening, as Richard was reading aloud a message Laura had written for her mother, that it happened. Amanda opened her eyes. It was a slow, dazed movement. First, she blinked several times, as if adjusting to the light. Then her gaze wandered around the room until it found Richard. There was a moment of confusion in her eyes, then recognition, and finally, something he couldn't decipher. Surprise? Joy? Fear? "Hi," he said softly, trying not to startle her. "It's okay. You're in the hospital. You were in an accident." She tried to speak, but the breathing tube still prevented her. She squeezed his hand harder, her eyes now fixed on his face, full of questions. Richard pressed the call button, and the medical team quickly sprang into action. Dr. Quinn rapidly assessed Amanda and determined the tube could be removed. The procedure was quick but uncomfortable. When she could finally speak, Amanda's first word was hoarse and urgent. "Girls, they're fine," Richard hurried to answer. "They're perfect. They're with me." A tear rolled down Amanda's face. "With you?" "Yes." He held her hand more firmly. "I've been taking care of them since the accident. We're in an apartment near the school. They're going to class normally. They're safe, Amanda." She closed her eyes for a moment, as if absorbing the information. When she reopened them, there was a mix of gratitude and confusion. How did you know?" "Coincidence or fate. I was at the hospital for a meeting, and I found them alone in the ICU hallway." He paused. "Amanda, why did you never tell me about them?" She looked away, her face marked by conflicting emotions. "Not now. Please." Dr. Quinn intervened gently. "Mrs. Anderson, I know you have many questions and concerns, but it's important that you rest. Your body has been through a significant trauma." "I want to see my daughters," Amanda insisted, her voice still weak but determined. "Tomorrow," the doctor promised. "If you remain stable through the night, we can transfer you to a regular room and allow them to visit. For now, Mr. Brown can stay a little longer, if you wish." When they were alone again, a heavy silence hung between them. 5 years of absence, unasked questions, unanswered responses. "They're mine, aren't they?" Richard finally asked, though he already knew the answer. The DNA test had only confirmed what his heart had recognized instantly. Amanda nodded slightly. "How did you find out?" "Besides the obvious resemblance?" He smiled faintly. "I did a DNA test. We needed it for the temporary custody." "Custody?" Her voice held a note of alarm. "Temporary, Amanda, just to ensure they could stay with me while you recover. Cecilia Sanders, from Social Services, is overseeing everything." She relaxed slightly. "Are they okay, really?" "They are. Laura is impressively mature for 8. She looks after her sisters like a little adult. Sophia is pure energy and joy. And Beatrice, she has your heart, Amanda. She left her favorite doll here with you so you wouldn't be lonely." Tears now streamed freely down Amanda's face. Richard took a tissue and gently dried them. "Are you—" She hesitated. "Are you really taking care of them? Yourself?" "With help, of course. Mrs. Gable and Adriana are incredible, but yes, I am. I've learned how to do braids, though. I still need practice. I found out Sophia is allergic to strawberries and that Beatrice only sleeps if she has her doll Nina." A sob escaped Amanda, a mixture of relief and contained emotion. "I never imagined—" "Neither did I." He squeezed her hand. "But I should have, Amanda. I should have looked for you, read the note more carefully, realized what was happening. I lost 5 years of their lives, of our life. It wasn't all your fault, she whispered. I ran away. I was scared. Scared of what? That you would choose the company, not us. Of not being enough. Of tying you down to something you didn't want. The sincerity of those words hit him deeply. She was right, in part. The Richard of 5 years ago might have done exactly that, chosen the company, the empire he was building, over the family he could have had. I was a different person then, he admitted. Obsessive, blind, unable to see beyond business. You were right to fear that. And now? Now? Richard smiled, thinking of the changes over the last few days. Now I know what's important. I've discovered I can delegate projects, but I can't delegate my daughter's love. I've learned that an empty luxury apartment is just a space, not a home, and I've realized that all the money I've accumulated can't buy the feeling of hearing Laura call me Dad for the first time. Amanda watched him for a long time, as if trying to determine the sincerity of his words. Laura called you Dad? Yesterday, casually, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I almost spilled my entire coffee. A small smile appeared on Amanda's face, the first since she had woken up. She was always the most intuitive one. She probably knew who you were before you even showed up. She told me about the secret box, Richard confessed, and about the letters. Amanda blushed slightly, looking away. She shouldn't have. That's private. Letters to me that were never sent? She didn't answer, but her silence was confirmation enough. Why did you never look for me, Amanda? Even after they were born? A long sigh escaped her dry lips. At first it was pride. You didn't come after me, so I concluded you didn't care enough. Then, when I found out I was pregnant, it was fear, and as time went on, it became harder and harder to imagine what that reunion would be like, what I would say, how I would explain. She paused. Besides, I saw your name in the news, your company growing, new developments. It seemed like you were living exactly the life you wanted, without complications, without us. Richard felt the weight of those words, the sadness of the lost years, of the decisions made out of fear and pride on both sides. I did everything wrong, he admitted. I was so obsessed with proving my worth through professional success that I didn't realize I was losing what really mattered. And now? What happens now? The question hung between them, laden with implications. Before Richard could answer, the nurse came in to check Amanda's vitals. It's getting late, Mr. Brown, she noted gently. Mrs. Anderson needs to rest. Richard nodded, reluctant to leave but understanding the necessity. I'll be back tomorrow with the girls, he promised, lightly squeezing Amanda's hand. They're so eager to see you. As he was at the door, Amanda's weak voice stopped him. Richard? He turned. Thank you for being there for them when I couldn't be. I always will be, he replied simply, with a certainty he had never felt before. On his way out of the hospital, he was approached by Cecilia Sanders, who was apparently waiting for him. I heard Mrs. Anderson woke up, she said. How was the meeting? Richard pondered the question. How to describe the whirlwind of emotions, the half-truths, the weight of the lost years, and the faint hope that was beginning to form. Complicated, he finally answered, but necessary. Cecilia nodded, understanding. Mr. Brown, I know this isn't the ideal time, but I need to inform you of a situation. While reviewing the hospital records, I found something unsettling. She paused, as if choosing her words. The system shows that your name was entered as Mrs. Anderson's emergency contact approximately 6 months ago, but when the accident occurred, that information did not appear for the admissions team. What do you mean? Someone accessed the system and temporarily suppressed that information. Her eyes met his. The last person to access Mrs. Anderson's file before the accident was Patricia Lima during a routine visit to the hospital 3 weeks ago. Richard felt as if the floor had disappeared from under his feet. Patricia? My assistant? Yes, she came as a representative of Brown Enterprises to finalize details of the new wing project. Apparently, she took the opportunity to do some unauthorized research in the system. The revelation was disturbing on multiple levels. Patricia not only knew about Amanda before he did, but she had deliberately hidden the information. But why? The answer came in a flash. Patricia had always been more than an assistant. She managed his life, controlled his access to information, filtered what she deemed relevant or not. For years she had cultivated an indispensable position of power by his side. The prospect of a family of other important people in Richard's life directly threatened her influence. "I need to handle this," he said, feeling anger rise within him. "Mr. Brown," Cecilia stopped him with a touch on his arm, "your priority now is your daughter's and Mrs. Anderson's recovery. The rest can wait." She was right, of course, but Patricia's betrayal was not something he could simply ignore. If it weren't for the chance, or fate, that had led him to the wrong hospital floor that day, how much more of his daughter's lives would he have lost? On the way home, his phone rang. It was Laura using Adriana's phone. "Dad, is Mommy awake yet? Can we go see her?" Dad. That word again, so simple and so powerful. "Yes, Princess, Mommy is awake, and she can't wait to see you all tomorrow." The sigh of relief on the other end of the line was audible. "I knew she'd get better," Laura said with the unshakable conviction of childhood. "Sophia and Bea are jumping for joy. We made a welcome home poster and everything." As he drove back to the small apartment on Oak Street, Richard reflected on how his life had completely changed in just 1 week. The man who had entered the hospital for a simple business meeting no longer existed. In his place was someone new, a father, a caregiver, a man rediscovering what it meant to love and be loved. As he parked, he saw the 3 girls in the apartment window, waving excitedly. Laura was holding the colorful poster where "We love you, Mommy" was written in uneven letters with hearts of all colors. Sophia and Beatrice were jumping and laughing, probably already planning what they would tell their mother the next day. Richard smiled, feeling, for the first time in a long time, truly at home. 2 weeks after waking from the coma, Amanda was finally discharged from Mercy Hope General Hospital. The doctors had been surprised by her remarkably fast recovery. "She has 3 very good reasons to get better," Dr. Quinn had commented, observing the girls who visited their mother daily, bringing drawings, stories, and a renewing energy to the hospital room. Richard's heart pounded as he drove to pick up Amanda. The last 2 weeks had been intense, dividing his time between caring for the girls, visiting the hospital, and resolving the situation with Patricia. After confronting her, with the evidence of her interference in the hospital records, she had confessed, between fake tears and empty justifications, that she just wanted to protect him from unnecessary complications. Richard had fired her that same day, temporarily delegating her duties to other team members. The apartment on Oak Street had been carefully prepared to welcome Amanda. The girls, with the help of Mrs. Gable and Adriana, had decorated the living room with balloons and "Welcome Home Mommy" banners. Sophia had insisted on making another chocolate cake. The first one didn't count because Mommy couldn't eat it, and Laura had organized a small celebration with her mother's favorite songs. Richard reflected on how in just 3 weeks his life had been completely transformed. The luxury apartment in the Gold Coast now seemed cold and impersonal compared to the warmth of the improvised home he had created with the girls. His meticulously planned routine of meetings and negotiations had given way to school schedules, ballet classes, and bedtime stories. And, surprisingly, he didn't miss his old life. Patricia had tried to contact him several times after being fired, alternating between apologies and veiled threats. "You won't be able to run the company without me," one of her messages read. "Without me to filter out the distractions, you'll lose focus." Richard now realized how she had become a sort of toxic guardian of his professional life, isolating him from personal connections she considered inconvenient. At the hospital, he found Amanda already dressed and sitting on the edge of the bed, waiting. She wore a simple dress that Laura had specially chosen from her clothes. She was still thinner than usual, with some marks from the accident, but her eyes had regained the sparkle he remembered so well. "Ready to go home?" he asked, trying to hide the nervousness in his voice. "More than ready." She smiled, a smile that was still hesitant, as if testing unknown waters. Are the girls okay? Anxious. They've probably destroyed the kitchen with all their preparations. A comfortable silence settled between them as a nurse completed the final discharge procedures. Over the past 2 weeks, they had talked a lot during his visits about the past, about the 5 years of separation, about the girls. But many questions still hung between them, especially about the future. In the car, Amanda looked out the window with a thoughtful expression. "It's strange," she commented. "For 5 years I created a routine, a life for myself and the girls. I fought so hard to keep everything going on my own. And now you're not alone anymore," Richard completed. "Unless you want to be," he added quickly, aware that he couldn't just assume his place in their lives. Amanda turned to him. "Is that what you want, Richard? Really? A life with 3 children, responsibilities, school commitments, childhood illnesses, adolescence ahead? It's very different from the corporate empire you've built." The question was fair. The man she had known 5 years ago would have run from this prospect like a high-risk investment with no guaranteed return. "I want our daughters in my life," he replied, keeping his eyes on the road. "Not just weekend or holiday visits. I want to be a real part of it, to see every achievement, every challenge." He paused. "And I want you too, Amanda, if you'll give me that chance." She didn't answer immediately, absorbing the weight of his declaration. "Are you sure? We're not the same people we were 5 years ago. I've changed. You probably have too." "I've changed for the better, I hope." He smiled slightly. "I've discovered I can live without constant financial reports, but I can't live without Sophia's smile when she manages a cartwheel, or Laura's concentration learning a new word in English, or Beatrice's hug after a nightmare." The rest of the drive was silent, each lost in their own thoughts. When they arrived at the building, Richard helped Amanda up the stairs. The elevator was out of order, as often happened in this older building. "Sorry about the elevator," he said. "It's different from what you're used to, I imagine." "It's exactly like the first apartments I lived in when I came to Chicago," Amanda replied with a nostalgic smile, "before I met you and your world of duplex penthouses and imported cars." At the apartment door he hesitated. "They're all inside, probably hiding to surprise you. Ready?" Amanda took a deep breath and nodded. When the door opened, there was a moment of absolute silence, followed by an explosion of children's voices. "Surprise! Welcome home, Mummy!" The 3 girls practically flew into Amanda's arms. She knelt to hug them properly, tears streaming freely down her face. Behind them, Mrs. Gable and Adriana watched the scene with emotional smiles. "Mommy, we made a cake!" exclaimed Sophia. "And we decorated everything," added Laura. "And Nina missed you," completed Beatrice, holding out the rag doll. Amanda hugged all 3 at once, as if trying to make up for every second of separation. Richard watched from a distance, aware that this was their moment, sacred in its intimacy. After the initial commotion, a small celebration followed. The cake was cut, simple gifts were given, and music was played. Amanda was settled comfortably on the sofa, from where she could watch everything, still too fragile to participate actively. "It's so good to be home," she said, looking around, "even if it's not exactly our home." "It can be," Richard replied, sitting beside her, "if you want it to be." "And your apartment?" "It's just a place. This," he gestured to the girls playing, to Mrs. Gable tidying the kitchen, to Adriana helping Beatrice with a drawing. "This is a home." At night, after the girls had finally fallen asleep, exhausted from all the excitement, Richard and Amanda had their first truly private moment in 5 years. Sitting on the small apartment balcony, they shared a bottle of grape juice. "No alcohol with your medication," he had insisted. "What's it going to be like now?" Amanda asked, looking at the city lights. "With your work, I mean. You can't stay away forever." "I've already reorganized a lot of things." Richard swirled the glass between his fingers, thoughtful. "I've delegated projects I used to insist on personally supervising. I've scheduled meetings only during business hours, while the girls are at school. I've discovered the world doesn't end if I'm not available 24/7. "And Patricia?" Laura mentioned something about you firing someone. Richard hesitated. He didn't want to burden Amanda with that story now, but he also didn't want to start this new chapter with secrets. Patricia knew about you and the girls. His voice was calm but firm. She found out when she visited the hospital to finalize the new wing project. She saw your name in the records with my emergency contact and deliberately suppressed that information. If it hadn't been for the chance of that day... Amanda turned pale. Why? Why would she do that? Power. Control. Richard shrugged. She considered herself indispensable to me, professionally and personally. A family threatened her position. I'm sorry, Amanda murmured. For what? For putting your name as a contact. I never imagined it would cause problems. She hesitated. I just wanted some assurance that if something happened to me, the girls wouldn't be left completely helpless. Richard took her hand. Don't apologize for that. Ever. You did the right thing. I'm the one who should have been there much sooner. A comfortable silence settled between them, filled only by the nocturnal sounds of the city. I found your secret box, Richard confessed finally. When we went to get the girls' things. Amanda froze, her eyes widening in alarm. Did you open it? No, he reassured her. But Laura told me about the letters. A sigh escaped Amanda's lips. That girl observes too much. Like her father. He smiled. Like her father, she agreed, returning the smile. Will you let me read those letters someday? Amanda pondered the question. Someday. Maybe. When I'm sure. Sure of what? That you're going to stay. For real. The vulnerability in that confession touched him deeply. Amanda, always strong, independent, capable of raising 3 daughters on her own, still feared abandonment. And how could he blame her? I'm going to stay, he promised, holding her hand more firmly. Not just because of the girls. For us. For you. I want a second chance, Amanda. To do it right this time. She studied him for a long moment, as if searching his eyes for the truth behind that promise. You know it won't be easy. We have a lot of unresolved history, and the girls need stability, not false hopes. I'm counting on it being difficult. He smiled. I'm good with challenges. The next day, a surprise awaited Amanda. Cecilia Sanders showed up at the apartment with a sealed envelope. I found this among your belongings at the hospital, the social worker explained. It was in the inner pocket of your purse. I thought it might be important. The envelope, yellowed with time, had 3 names written on the front: Laura, Sophia, and Beatrice. Amanda recognized it immediately, her face paling. These are the letters I wrote to them, she explained in a low voice when Cecilia had left. Years ago, in case I wasn't here anymore, to explain about their father, about our choices. Richard felt a lump in his throat. You believed I would take them in even after all this time? Amanda traced the outline of the envelope with her fingers. I hoped. Deep down, I always believed that if you knew about them, you would do the right thing. That's why I kept your name as my contact. That trust, despite everything, moved him deeply. What do you plan to do with the letters now? Amanda reflected for a moment. Maybe it's time to read them, not as a farewell, but as a new beginning. That afternoon, with the girls gathered in the living room, Amanda opened the envelope. Inside were 3 separate letters, each addressed to one of her daughters. The girls listened with solemn attention as their mother read. The letters spoke of unconditional love, of difficult choices, of a father who, though absent, had never been forgotten. They explained in simple and honest language how Amanda and Richard had loved each other, how they had separated, and how she had always kept alive the hope that one day they would be a complete family. If he is by your side now, the letter to Laura read, it means he was always destined to find you. Give him a chance to stay, to love you as I know he can. When the reading was over, there were tears in everyone's eyes, even Richard's, who rarely allowed himself such a display of emotion. Laura was the first to speak, with the maturity that characterized her. Are you really going to stay, Dad? Forever? The simplicity of the question held the weight of all the broken promises, all the childhood fears of abandonment, all the fragile hopes of a family. Forever, he answered without hesitation. It's a promise. Sophia, ever practical, had other concerns. Are we going to keep living here because I like it here but my room is small? Richard and Amanda exchanged glances, realizing there were still many practical decisions to be made. We'll find a place that's perfect for all of us, Amanda answered, not too far from your school. And with space to play, added Beatrice. And a room all to myself, negotiated Sophia. And a library, Laura smiled, like the one in Dad's apartment. Richard watched the interaction, marveling at the ease with which they planned a future together, as if it had always been the natural path, as if 5 years of separation were just a temporary detour on the map of their lives. That night, after the girls had fallen asleep, he found Amanda in the kitchen sipping tea. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, sitting across from her. "About how strange fate is." She smiled. "I spent 5 years building a life without you, convincing myself it was for the best, and then one accident and here we are." "Regrets? About the accident, certainly." She laughed softly. "About being here now?" "No. I think the girls always needed you. And maybe I did too." Richard reached his hand across the table, finding hers. "I need to show you something." He led her to the room he was using, where his work briefcase was neatly stored in the corner. From inside he took out an old folder, and from it the yellowed note Amanda had left 5 years ago. She recognized it immediately, her eyes widening. "You kept it?" "I kept it," he nodded. Even without fully understanding what I had lost, something in me knew it was important. Amanda took the note with trembling fingers. The words, written in a moment of desperation and courage, now seemed to belong to another life, another person. "We can't build a future together when only one of us is willing to change. I need to find my own way. Please don't look for me. A." "I was pregnant when I wrote this," she confessed. "I had just found out. I was terrified, confused. You were so absorbed in that big project, so distant. I was afraid a baby would just be another unwanted complication in your perfectly planned life. And then you found out there were 3. Richard shook his head, imagining the shock, the fear, the loneliness. "It was at the first ultrasound." She smiled at the memory. "I almost fainted when the doctor said it was identical. Triplets. I thought, how am I going to raise 3 babies alone? But somehow I managed." Richard moved closer, holding her hands. "You are the strongest person I've ever known, Amanda Anderson. I had to be, for them. And now, can we be strong together?" She studied him for a long moment, as if weighing all the possibilities, all the risks. "We can try. Day by day. No grand promises, just real daily commitments." For the Richard of 5 years ago, this cautious answer would have been insufficient. He wanted certainties, contracts, guarantees. But the man now standing before her understood the value of small promises kept daily, of trust patiently rebuilt, of love proven in everyday actions, not dramatic declarations. "Day by day," he agreed, "starting now." 3 months later, on a sunny Sunday afternoon, the Brown-Anderson family celebrated a new beginning. They had moved into a spacious house in Bucktown, with a backyard where the girls could play, individual rooms as Sophia had so desired, and the library Laura adored. It wasn't as luxurious as Richard's old apartment, nor as simple as Amanda's. It was a perfect middle ground, a new space that reflected the fusion of their lives. Richard had completely reorganized his professional routine. He had delegated more responsibilities, hired 2 vice presidents, and now worked predominantly from home 3 days a week. Brown Enterprises had not only survived the changes, but thrived under this new, more balanced and collaborative leadership. Amanda, fully recovered from the accident, had resumed her work as a translator, but now with the luxury of being able to select only the projects that truly interested her. Together, They had found a dynamic that allowed both to maintain their professional identities without sacrificing family life. On that particular afternoon, they were celebrating not only the new house, but also the girls' birthdays. 9 for Laura, 7 for Sophia, 5 for Beatrice. The backyard was decorated with colourful balloons, a table laden with sweets, and an extravagant cake that Mrs. Gable had lovingly prepared. Friends from school, neighbours, and a few colleagues from both their workplaces were present. Even Cecilia Sanders, who had become a family friend, had come with a gift for each girl. As he watched his daughters run around the yard, laughing with the carefree joy of childhood, Richard felt Amanda approach. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, intertwining her fingers with his. "About how I almost lost all of this," he smiled, squeezing her hand, "and about how grateful I am for that broken elevator in that hospital." Amanda laughed, resting her head on his shoulder. "Destiny, maybe? Or a second chance I didn't deserve, but one I promised not to waste." Amanda looked at the small gold ring on her finger, not a wedding band yet, but a promise given the week before in an intimate moment, just between the two of them. "You know what Laura told me yesterday?" Amanda commented. "That she always knew you would find us. One day, she said she heard my prayers every night and knew they would be answered. She was always the most intuitive one. Like her father." Amanda smiled. The 3 girls ran up to them, each holding a piece of coloured paper. "Dad! Mom! We made a drawing of our family," Sophia announced, holding out her paper where 6 smiling figures appeared hand in front of a house. "6?" Richard questioned, counting the figures again. "Who's the 6th? Beatrice smiled, revealing the gap from a recently lost baby tooth. "It's the baby in Mommy's tummy, silly." Richard froze, turning slowly to Amanda, who was blushing intensely. "I was going to tell you tonight," she explained, biting her lip, "but it seems our daughters have a 6th sense for these things." "A baby?" he repeated, stunned. "Are we going to—" "Have a baby, yes," she smiled, "this time together from the start." The news was an unexpected gift, the promise of a new chapter they could write side by side, without the mistakes and absences of the past. Richard hugged Amanda carefully, as if she were made of the most precious material in the world. "Thank you," he whispered in her ear, "for this second chance, for our family." Laura, observant as always, pulled Sophia and Beatrice away. "Let's leave them alone for a little bit," she instructed, with wisdom beyond her years. "Grown-ups need their moments too." As the girls ran back across the yard, Richard and Amanda remained in an embrace, feeling the warmth of the Sunday sun and the promise of all the days to come. It wouldn't always be easy. They knew that. There would be challenges, arguments, constant adjustments. But they would face it all together, one day at a time, building not the perfect relationship they had imagined when they were young, but something stronger, more real. A family built on the foundation of forgiveness, understanding, and the second chance that had changed their lives forever. In the house in Bucktown, amidst children's laughter and colourful balloons, a simple truth prevailed. It's never too late to start over, as long as the heart is willing to stay. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Richard and Amanda has touched your hearts. To continue this emotional journey, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it by clicking the link on the left. If this narrative about fresh starts and second chances resonated with you, be sure to subscribe to our channel and give the video a like. Every day we bring you unique stories that explore the complexities of life and love. And what about you? Have you ever had a second chance that changed your story? Share with us in the comments. We're eager to hear about your own journeys of new beginnings.